So, with inflation happening, and you might be talking to yourself like, man, inflation is going up and it's making my money worth less and less. So, how can you save more when inflation is making your money, you know, buy less and less things? Well, you know, the thing is, when it comes to spending power, inflation means that things cost more and your money just becomes less valuable. But when a period of high inflation hits, like kind of how we are now, you might want to consider changing the way you handle your finances. This way, it'll help you protect the value of your cash. So, inflation is a time for investors and savers to reevaluate their strategies. Through the Federal Reserve, the government tries to combat inflation on a large scale by raising the federal funds rate, which is the interest rate that commercial banks use to borrow and lend money to each other. When the cost of borrowing becomes more expensive, higher interest rates trickle down to consumer products such as loans and mortgages, and it makes them more expensive. But higher interest rates may also apply to deposit accounts, meaning that banks start to offer higher interest rates on checking, saving, and certificates of deposit. No one knows what the future is going to bring, but by making changes to how you spend and where you keep your money, you might be able to weather the times of inflation a little bit easier. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can save more during some of these periods of inflation. The first one we want to look at is we're going to look at trying to find high yield interest rates, right? Because you know it can be frustrating to not be able to get loans for big purchases as easily during periods of high inflation. But still, consumers, you can take advantage of higher interest rates on bank accounts. This way, it'll help you fight the effects of inflation on that cash. Now, bank account interest rates usually don't totally beat the rate of inflation, but these accounts can help hedge against inflation far better than keeping cash at home or in a, just like another account, but it's like a low rate account. Now, the national average annual percentage yield for savings accounts is 0.06%, right? But there are plenty of financial institutions that offer rates much higher, closer to, 1% APY or more. Now, to find these rates, you're gonna have to do some research, right? Research high yield or high interest accounts, and choose the bank that best works for you, right? You're gonna have to do due diligence and search out because you might find one account that's offering 0.50%, but it has a lot of fees or something with it, or something like you have to have two separate accounts, like a checking and savings, or you might find another one that's 0.40, but you can have just that account for the savings account, and you don't need to have all these fees or a second account or anything like that, and it would be a much better deal for you, right? So always do the due diligence and find what best works for you. The second thing was we need to talk about cutting those costs, keeping your costs low. If you haven't looked over your budget in a while, that's probably a good time to do it, right? During everything that happened in 2020, 2021 with the pandemic and everything, you might have subscribed to multiple streaming services that you just don't really use that much anymore, right? You've been stuck inside for a long time, and now you're like, we're going out there, we're having fun, right? Or you might be spending more money dining out or paying for more convenience services now, right? Some people are taking even more radical steps to save money. Um, you know, you have these larger lifestyle changes that you can do to keep your costs low in the face of inflation. When you're, so we'll use an example. There's this lady who, in 2021 lived out of her car while driving around the country and, plans to return that way of living soon to save on housing costs. Now, she's also been trying to trim her budget by biking 16 miles round trip to work and by eating more rice and beans, which is cheap, but it gets the job done, right? But there are certain things that you can do if you're willing to go to those extremes. Now, I'm not saying you should live out of your car, don't do that, right? Unless it's something you want to do. But you got to be concerned about rising food costs and the impact that's going to have on the entire supply chain, right? And you can use the time to prepare for future food insecurity by learning what food you need compared to what food you just enjoy, right? And that might seem drastic, but it could help you save money and eat better in the short term. And like I said, not everyone can or wants to live in their car, but some money saving tactics can work on a smaller scale. Instead of driving your car to work, if it's a couple miles down the road, just start biking a couple days a week until you get used to it, and then you can bike almost every day, right? It'll be healthier for you and you'll save money on gas, right? Or you can reevaluate your food budget and you can add more cheap, healthy meals, right? Salads that you can make yourself, fruit, stuff like that, you know. Or for a really big change, right? You could downsize your housing to save even more money. I mean, do you really need the 3 bed, 2 bath? Can you get away with, a 1 bedroom place if it's just you and your significant other? Right? Things to think about because you could save a lot of money doing that. Now, one of the last things we need to talk about is you need to consider investing or buying bonds, and doing this for long-term savings, right? Because it's a good idea to keep short-term cash, your emergency fund, right? And you need to keep it accessible in like a savings account. But if you have savings that you don't expect to need for a year or more, right, you might want to consider investing those funds or buying a treasury bond, right? For some people, who have a lot of cash sitting on the sideline, investing is probably the best way for you to not lose money. Now, more people might be willing to take on more risk because they want a higher rate of return, right? And most consumers, I think you should look into getting Treasury Direct Series savings bonds, which can give an interest rate of up to 7% or better on up to $10,000 for a 1 year term. Now these bonds are basically like a certificate of deposit, right? You put your money in for a year, and by the end of the year, you have a guaranteed rate of return that hopefully stays higher than the current rate of inflation. So your money won't lose value. The government will continue to review the inflation data that's happening and everything that's going on and make appropriate changes to the federal runs rate. However, there are other factors that may slow inflation in the next coming months or year or so, such as changes to global supply chains that might free up inventory and lead to lower prices for goods. No matter whether inflation goes up or down, it's a good idea to keep an eye on ways to optimize your savings. So make sure you guys go look at your savings, find ways to, reduce the amount of money you're doing, make a budget, find out where, you're spending heavily, and then, consider investing, right? Just, I have other videos about investing if you guys are curious about those. I have videos about budgeting and stuff like that. If you need help getting a good start. But hopefully, you guys, the best time to start is today, right? So I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you did. But until I see you guys in the next video, y'all be safe.